Alrighty, let's jump right into the aftermath of World War II. So the war years brought about a tremendous shift in population. People were moving around the country in search for new work. We saw a shift from farmland to city life. Big government was brought to America by the war. There was a bit more direct control over individual lives of the American citizens, and big businesses were getting bigger. We saw increased capital, production capacity increased as well, and new technologies came about. America at one point even owned 50% of the world's material assets. We saw a shift from things like local grocery stores to supermarkets, and more corporations came about. Women's roles specifically changed after the war because they went from doing men's work during the war to being forced to retreat to the kitchen when it ended. This proved to be difficult for quite a few women because they saw this unequal footing return to the workplace. Loose behavior began to be tolerated, even justified, and traditional courting patterns changed. We were seeing more divorce, and, that was pretty weird. African Americans, not much changed for them following the war, but they did see a glimmer of hope after we crusaded against Hitler's racist ideologies. So, as for pop culture in the 1950s, this became super important, and the family unit became one of the staples for the 1950s. The post-World War economy was booming. We saw that increase in average annual salary, and I just left some other, interesting statistics as it relates to then and now, if you want to pause and check that out. So, diving deeper into pop culture, television was becoming increasingly popular. At the beginning of the decade, only 9% of households had a television, and by the end of the decade, nearly 90% of households had one. So, attending a showing at the movie theater also became a huge hit, and the drive-in theater became a hit towards the end of the decade. This allowed for film stars to become household names. Stars like Marilyn Monroe, Marlon Brando, Audrey Hepburn, Elizabeth Taylor, James Dean, everyone knew them. Sporting events were the staple pastime of the decade. Over 15 million tickets were purchased to Major League Baseball games nearly every year. And the introduction of rock and roll truly shook the music industry. Names like Elvis Presley changed music for forever.